Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. There is a lot to cover. Digitizing a business is not simple, but it's not difficult if you take the right approach. So please bear with me. I'm going to make some assumptions over here that some of us might be at the very early stages of the digitization process. And I'm going to take it all the way through from the earliest possible stage right through to the most sophisticated stage, but in very, very simple terms. This is not going to be a webinar about which is the best technology out there and which one would I rate above any other technology. What I have found with technology is that you need to find your relationship with whatever technologies you're using. There are certain user interfaces, there's certain designs, there's certain iconography that appeal to some people which don't appeal to others. The benefit we have, though, is that there are hundreds and thousands of apps out there. So the principles around how you should begin digitizing your business, I think, are more important than which technologies you would use. During the webinar, I will talk to some that I'm familiar with, some that I like, and I'll give my reasons for that. But this is not a tech show on tech apps. It is a business strategy on how to digitize in order to stay relevant and stay alive in the Corona economy. My name is Pavlo Phitidis. I welcome you all. We're halfway through lockdown. We're just over halfway through lockdown. Let's make it happen. Right, so there are three principles we're going to start off with. The principles really are the philosophical approach that one would assume, that one would take to the digitization process. There are probably more. In fact, I know there are more. But these are the three big ones that we as private business owners need to consider first and foremost. The first is people principles. Are you digitizing to empower people or to replace people? It'll always be a combination of both. In Auric, the business that I'm a co-founder of, about 3 years ago, we digitized 186 administrative tasks. People were very nervous in the beginning and very apprehensive. They thought that in the process of digitizing these tasks, would they be made redundant? Would they be put into a position where there is no work for them to do? We communicated very clearly to our teams. And we said we're looking for the high-level processing tasks, the ones that really just kill your soul and kill your spirit in the business. We're looking to release you from those tasks so we can apply you to more value-adding activities. Through that process, you will be upskilled, and through that process, you will be more valuable to the business as a whole, securing your position. So we undertook this process. 186 tasks digitized 3.5 years ago. The following year, about another 120 odd tasks digitized to create the platform that we operate today. What happened during that process? We got more efficient. We increased the quality of experience to our clients. We increased the impact that we had on businesses that we were working with. As a result of that, we grew. As a result of that, we employed more people, but who we employed began to change. The next are your developmental principles. How are you going to go about developing your digitization strategy? There are two big ideas out there. The one is called waterfall. The waterfall process is where you create one big project. You bring on a tech team and you say, program up, code up my entire business, and they begin. Or alternatively, you buy a product that promises to digitize your entire business. So if you think about the best known out there is the SAP system. You decide that you're going to buy into the SAP system. You then embark on a program of what you believe might be a couple of months. It normally turns out to be a couple of years, before the processes in your business are all digitized and stitched and knitted together. The other approach is the agile process. It's where really you look at certain discrete parts of your business and decide to digitize them one at a time. In that environment, you might well use multiple applications out there. What we are looking for at this point in time, and what we can afford as small and medium businesses, and by that I mean businesses doing up to about 300 million a year of annual revenues. We want certainty, we want speed, we've got budgets that things need to fit into, and most importantly, we want adaptability. We want adaptability because we don't know what the future is going to look like at the moment. The lie of the land is very, very uncertain. On the 17th of April, Friday morning, when we all go back to work, it will not be business as usual. So given that, we should take a more prudent and perhaps conservative approach. You can hear from my arguments over here, I certainly favor the agile approach, because the agile approach gives you options all the time. If I were to compare waterfall to agile, and I were to give them animal characters, waterfall is like a buffalo. If you look at where a buffalo's horns are at the back of its head. It sets its target, it makes a decision, and then it puts its head down and it charges. Here's the thing. If that target that it's charging has moved, the buffalo goes screaming by because it's big, it's heavy, it's got momentum. It raises its head only to see that it's missed its target, so it has to reposition itself. Whereas the agile process behaves more like a leopard. It looks for where its prey might be. It takes 3-4 steps, lifts its head, reanalyzes the environment, looks at the changes in the wind, looks at the changes around everything, and then adjusts its path and continues towards its target. I think that as small businesses, growing businesses, medium-sized businesses that are undertaking very quickly a digitization process, the agile method is certainly a better principle to adopt. The last principle is a design principle. This ties into the idea of waterfall and agile. It either is going to be design-led or it's going to be product-led. So what do I mean by design-led? Design-led has a number of features to it. It means that you would build your business systems manually first. And what do I mean by business system? So let's just pause there for a minute. Every business has the same organs as every other business. Imagine this environment. Let's go to the Olympic Games. Let's look at 4 athletes. Let's look at the marathon runner, the 100-meter sprinter, the long jumper, and the shot putist. When we place them in front of us, they all have different bone and muscle structures. Some are heavy set and squat. Some are thin, tall, lanky. They have the ideal bone and muscle body shape for the discipline that they're involved in. Think of that as your industry or sector. Every industry or sector favors a particular kind of frame, a business model to operate in. But all 4 athletes have got the same organs. They have a heart, liver, lungs, kidney, spleen. Those organs need to work optimally in each of those bodies, and they need to stitch and meet together. A good heart with poor lungs will harm that athlete's performance. So each organ needs to be healthy, and on top of it, they all need to be integrated. And what digitizes that entire process? The brain. So we're going to be talking about systems first. You've got marketing systems to generate leads, sales systems to convert the leads, operational systems to deliver on your promise to your customers and clients, people systems to make sure you've got the right people doing the right thing at the right time. And then you've got money management systems. Money management systems are really like the lungs. They need to be sure that there's enough money or oxygen in the business for the business to perform like an athlete would. So let's just scale it one layer down further. What is a system then? It's activities in a sequence that can be measured and that can be taught. Because what you're looking to do is find system operators to run your systems for you. For example, let's look at a marketing system. Let's say you're in the business-to-business selling environment. And let's say you're selling to very large entities. Let's say these entities might well be the mines. The way that mines like to be communicated with is classically through email. So what would you do? You would draft a campaign, in other words, a promotion, and that would mean that you have to have email content, perhaps a picture on the email, an offer that would resonate with whomsoever you're sending the email to. You would then send the email on a monthly basis, say on the 15th of every month. So we have activities, which is content, picture, a distribution platform, an email sending platform, and a date, a calendar. You would send the emails and wait for a response. If you send 50 emails, you're hoping to get 5, 10, 15 responses. That is what a lead generation system in its most basic form looks like. Activities in a sequence that can be measured. And look at this. If you build it that way, it means you can train someone to do it for you, what I refer to as a systems operator. Once you have done that, and you can see it's working, and you can see the content is right, and you can see the distribution platform works, the email system works, and you can see that that operator of that marketing system has got good control over it, you're then going to look to see what can you digitize in that particular system on the basis of how you built your system, because you know your business best. So you build your systems manually, you stress test and settle them. That is the way we market our business. That's the way we do it. And we do so through 12 months of the year on the 15th of every single month. We then begin to digitize them. And what does that mean? Well, there are a bevy of technologies out there, from SharpSpring to HubSpot, to Pipedrive, to many, many others, which are all marketing support, digitized applications. You would look to take your manual system that works for you and your business, and given the fact that you understand that system, it then empowers you to make a call on which is the best technology out there suited to your business and your style of working in your sector, in your industry, based on what you have to offer. It puts you in control. You pick and stick with the application and the software that you invest into, and then you research the ease and use of it in a marketplace. So if you look at any of these applications out there, for example, Xero, which is an accounting software, exists and has around it a marketplace. If you look at HubSpot, which is a marketing software, it has a marketplace. And what a marketplace means is that there are many, many other affiliated technologies that would support and integrate into those technologies in their own right. You need to find technologies that are well embedded in marketplaces, because if you adopt a design-led strategy, it means that with every system, you're going to source the best of breed application that you believe works for you, but in the end of it, they all need to stitch together. If they have open APIs, which are the protocols that allow one technology to talk to another technology, it would be seen and demonstrated by them being involved in a rich, vibrant marketplace. If it's product-led, well, what you have to do is scope out your business in detail. There's still no avoiding understanding what all your systems look like. But this time round, you can't digitize one part of a system. You're looking to digitize the entire mapped out processes for marketing, for sales, for fulfillment and operations, for people systems, for money management systems and procurement. It is an extensive process of mapping it out, because once you've mapped it out, you then have the opportunity to research and select the best of breed, complete, comprehensive enterprise resource planning management system. That is what a SAP is. SAP argues that they are the brain of your business. And by bringing the brain into your business, it will enable you to digitize all the organs that the brain looks after. You need to double up your budget for installment and training, because these things take a lot longer than the flashy salesperson will tell you they do. Source and select trainers and app developers. These softwares are not uncomplicated. It takes time to master them, and it takes consistent ongoing training because they themselves are being consistently adapted and upgraded. So right, we've got 3 principles. Let's look at the digitizing approach that one would take to digitizing your business. There are 4 layers in digitizing your business, and we always start with the most simple and the one that brings in the revenue fastest and quickest, especially in tough times like this. We're going to look at communications, collaboration, coordination, and competition. We're also then going to look at it from the perspective of 2 user groups. Inside the business, so that is classically your teams, your staff, your employees, and outside the business, and that would be everybody else. It would be your suppliers, it would be your customers. So as we talk through these layers of digitization, you must think both with a mind for how your team can use it and how you can use it for customers, suppliers, and then those awkward service providers like SaaS that you typically need to have a good relationship with. So communication, let's start. The objective over here is communications and engagement. I've got to tell you folks, I'm actually devastated, not horrified, because I really think that the most important people in any society is the private business owner. If you think about it, we risk everything we have to establish and build the businesses that we own. We are the biggest employers in any society. We are the fastest growers of tax revenues, not in value, but in speed and velocity in any single society. And yet there is very, very little assistance and support for us out there. And what upsets me so much is that a lot of people were not, rather they were trapped in a period of denial around what COVID-19 would do. When the shutdown came, a lot of us were caught with our pants down. And that is evident in websites. I look at a lot of websites. I speak to a lot of business owners, both here, the US and the UK. And I'm horrified at some of the websites I see. By now, our websites should be stable. Our websites are a shop front. It is our only shop front. To have it well designed and to have the messaging clearly communicated is absolutely paramount. It's important. To have the website search engine friendly and optimized is important. If you have website developers, the first task is to get them to ratify that your website is SEO friendly and well designed. And that means that the content needs to be structured in a particular way. The messaging now is more important than ever, but it also needs to have a sitemap because that's how Google relates to and connects to your website. Those are the basics. Your content needs to be rethought. I can promise you what you are offering and in the way that you are offering it pre-COVID-19 will not be the same way that you ought to be offering it post-shutdown and what lies ahead, which I believe is an 18-month journey. The world would have changed and the world will change bit by bit by bit. We will not recognize the way we do business 18 months from now compared to the way we did it 6 months ago. Distance engagements like this are going to be frequented. A lot of people have realized the efficiency. A lot of people have understood how the basis of screen-to-screen engagements and relationship building and screen-to-screen selling is working for them. They're at the earliest stages, but your website is paramount. If you don't have the ability to communicate a product or a service that solves the new problems we are all going to experience in a physical distancing economy that will last for around 18 months, then how do you expect the content on the website to work for you? So rethink the content on your website. It might also mean that you need a shopping cart. And I say this very cautiously, because depending on what business you're in, it would depend on the value of a shopping cart. I'll give you an example. Most of the courier businesses right now in the lockdown have been shut down. The only couriers that can operate are those that are supporting essential services. In that environment, there are very few of us, unless we're in the essential service, that can benefit from the lockdown. But what we need to be thinking about is in an environment post the lockdown, when physical distancing becomes important, how do you take orders for products and services from your clients? How do you promote products and services to your clients? Your shopping cart might just simply be a digitized method of helping your reps take orders, and secure inbound orders. It simply creates the distance. The idea of driving from client to client to client to client in an environment where everyone's going to be apprehensive and nervous, where physical distancing is going to be an important feature, where you're selling to someone else wearing a face mask and gloves, versus a shopping cart that might just enable it for you, is something worthwhile thinking about. If you're in a business that really serves, let's call it the broad population, the idea of e-commerce, getting your product to market, is not a viable option, in the sense that we don't have proper postal codes and addresses. So the business to consumer side over here is going to be challenged, but there are answers to it. For example, one of the businesses I work with, called Pargo Point, has established Pargo lockers in the Caltex garages, in the Clicks, in a lot of the big retail stores. When we bounce back into the retail space, you are well able, for example, to sell this particular watch through your jeweler's website for delivery and collection at a Caltex garage in a Pargo locker. So you don't need to be concerned about the physical address of the customer that you're selling to. Social media needs to be jacked up. And I'm very, very cautious of this because I fundamentally believe it's a CAC game. And what CAC stands for is the customer acquisition cost. Social media has really conned us in many ways. And it's conned us in saying, listen, if you create good, clean, original content, beautifully produced, we will rate you right up there as Google. We will expose you as Facebook. We will show you to the world as Instagram. They want good quality content because it creates a lot of activity on their sites. But here's the thing, it's a pay-to-play environment. All those companies, whether it be LinkedIn, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Google, YouTube, are listed entities that are driven by shareholder return numbers. They change the algorithms of how you can rate on their sites fortnightly, depending on the performance of their shareholders' requirements. It is not a fair place, it is not a fair space, but we have to have it engaged and we need to work with it effectively. So the way that you produce content needs to be very carefully thought through. It needs to be tone relevant and it needs to be specific around your business. They are not good platforms for necessarily selling. They are very good platforms for building relationships. Relationships that warm up people to your brand, that warm up people and create familiarity to your products and services, that will then allow you to pick up the phone or to establish a Zoom call in order for you to engage around how you can be of service to your customers and clients. The right channel for the right engagement. I'm horrified, guys, I'm horrified at how many people have not jacked up, especially at this time, and especially into the business environment, their LinkedIn profiles. Engage on LinkedIn and get active on LinkedIn. Get onto YouTube, go onto the LinkedIn helpline and understand how to build a proper profile so you can put your best foot forward and then insist on it with the rest of your team. I fundamentally believe that this is a really good platform for business people to reach business people, not to sell, but to establish relationships. And collaboration in this environment is crucial. Relationships before transactions, that's the message on social media. There's a way to use social media to build familiarity and to build trust. to position you for a transaction. It's not transaction first. When I look at LinkedIn and I get a huge amount of content coming through on LinkedIn, and it's someone who hasn't bothered to see who I am and what I do and what matters to me and what doesn't, and what business I'm in for that matter, and they simply send me an offer with some sort of PDF attachment. What do? I simply delete. I don't even read it. So it's cost them energy, it's cost them bandwidth, it's cost them time, and it simply flies right by me. But the moment someone sends a personal message first, or a connection request, and I can see that they're in an affiliated or interesting sector or industry, and a connection begins, then you can start building your followers through that. And when you see people who are in affiliated industries to you, or doing something that you really think is innovative, special, unique, engage with their content. Don't simply say congrats. So I think this is really foresightful given the environment we're in. And I really learned something from it. That kind of engagement is what builds relationships. And we need to get good at building digital relationships. Email, Zoom or Skype, and WhatsApp and form sites. I'm horrified at the number of people who did not put in place technologies to enable staff to communicate with each other. If you're running a business with 100-odd people in it, and you've got a couple of managers or team leaders, have you created work groups? Have you created frequent, ongoing Zoom sessions? And the reason Zoom and Skype are so important, the reason screen selling is so important and screen engagement is so important is because on the phone, what do I have to work with? I have your voice to work with, and I have your message to work with. But on a screen, I have voice, I have a message, I have your eyes, I have your body language, I have an environment. I can see whether I believe you are sincere or not sincere. I can see with my staff members whether they're in a good state of mind or not good state of mind. I can see with my team whether they are dressed for business or simply engaging with me in pajamas, which over the phone, I would never know. And what concerns me as a business owner, I want my team to be doing useful, productive activities during this period. WhatsApp groups are crucial to create engagement and to keep the spirit, the culture, the values of your company alive. You should be holding a weekly town hall meeting, a gathering with all your staff, either through WhatsApp or through Skype or through Zoom, and to simply talk about how you see the future. How do you think they are feeling? How do you think they are thinking around how you are thinking? The number of business closures I've witnessed in the last week and a half, which is now sitting at 68, is devastating. Those individuals that work for you are as scared, as apprehensive, and as nervous about the future as you might be in your own business. It's important during this time that as business owners, we become business leaders. And a town hall meeting once a week to simply touch base, shoot the breeze, see how everyone is doing is absolutely crucial to keep your team settled, locked and loaded, and ready to grow after the lockdown. For customer engagement, the number of corporates that have turned around to me and said, we cannot get hold of our SME suppliers. We are looking for product, we are looking for service. We know that they can do it, we know they can make it, even though they currently don't. But we understand their manufacturing and delivery capabilities. These are new services and new products we need, but we can't find them, we can't reach them. Every single one of your team in the front end of your business should be having engagements on a weekly basis with the buyers of your services and products, not to sell, but to simply establish and build relationships. Let it be known you are open for business. And then finally, Dropbox or Google Documents. It really creates shared access because we're looking at communication, efficient communication. So for example, if you are building out a new product, or if you've put new pricing together, where are those price lists? Do your sales teams, whether they be local or right around the country, have easy access to them? Are they able to continue with doing their business? Or are you making frantic phone calls to everybody with everyone simply taking notes on how to update the price lists or what's in stock and what's not in stock. Because right now, if you have stock, you should be selling. Do people have access to your inventory lists and how much stock is available? Dropbox is a very, very useful technology to simply place data and make it accessible to a broad reach within your organization. So communication protocols are the first area of digitization. We then move, once we have that in play, working well, to collaboration. The objective over here is to increase team effectiveness. Money, on the money side, do you have accounting software? Please don't tell me you're still working with some sort of Excel designed management accounting system. These softwares out there are so efficient. They've got incredible reporting and diagnostic capabilities, and we should all be using them, whether we're doing 500,000 Rand a year of revenues or anything up to, obviously, 300 million Rands a year of revenues. These softwares also allow you to integrate and link into your bank accounts. So immediately they do reconciliations. And what that does is it generates the data that your money team can then use. It allows you to link them to your accountants, because right now you want to be producing quality management accounts. You want to have a very good understanding of what resources you have in your business. You need to have a very clear understanding on who still owes you money and how you're going to be bringing it in. If you don't have these technologies and these softwares enabled at this point in time, integrated into your bank accounts and accessible to your accountants so that they can, from a distance, provide you with good management information, it's like sailing in an increasingly wild storm without a compass or navigation equipment. Sales, CRM, customer relationship management software. I'm hoping that most of you have built out in your systems a sales conversion process. So remember, in marketing, that's about getting inquiries into the business. When an inquiry comes into the business, how do you shepherd the inquiry through increasing stages of value to get that inquiry converted into a customer? So what we look for is we call it a lead generation pipeline. It's activities in a sequence that bring leads in to a point where you can hand over the leads to your sales team. And from there, what are the activities in sequence that can be measured that your sales team should be maturing that inquiry into a customer or client? A CRM allows you to build a database of all the clients who make inquiries with you. It allows you to organize the progression of inquiries from interest to conversion in a client in a manner that gives you insight and data. If you, for example, believe, let's go back to the example of the mine. So the mine makes an inquiry and says, yes, I'm interested in your mothballing pump solution, because some of the mines have had to mothball during the shutdown period. What you need to do is take that and say, right, I need to ask you a couple of questions. Are you a deep mine? Are you a shallow mine? Are you in Rustenburg? Are you in Kuruman? And as you slowly gather that information, you mature the ability of the sales individual to give the right solution given the circumstances of that client. It's activities in a sequence to create insight and knowledge of the client's problem with a view for your sales member to respond with the right solution. The CRM lets you build a database and it lets you manage the performance of every deal you have in your pipeline. What that then does is it lets you see which sales team members are adept and capable to move and mature an inquiry through the pipeline process to conversion, and which ones need training, support, and help. HubSpot and TweetDeck are also very, very useful as solutions in marketing. When you're sending out messages, be it on Twitter, be it on Instagram, be it on Facebook, be it on LinkedIn, do you have one single platform that you can craft the offer or craft the message and then distribute it with one simple click across multiple platforms. It really is incredibly helpful and useful to your marketing and sales teams, or to yourself if you're doing it. Operations, scheduling and work order tools to organize delivery of services and products. And there are so many out there. This becomes very specific to your particular business in its own right. So if you have installation teams with route schedules, so for example, plumbers and electricians are essential services. If you're involved in the solar industry, you've got solar teams that do solar installations. If you're in the contracting or construction sector, you've got teams with route schedules. How do you know if they're working effectively? How do you know where they are at any one point in time? How do you know if your, let's call it overall projects manager, has a good grip on where the teams are, how long they are there for, and on which routes to send the teams? These technologies exist out there, and there are many of them that immediately allow collaboration between the project manager, the sales team, and the installation team. You're looking for that collaborative effort in order to improve efficiency. If you look at job cards, are they linked to parts inventory? So for example, when a work order comes in and a job card comes in, is the job card linked to the inventory that you have on team so that you can make sure that all the parts are available for the job to be delivered and effectively conditioned and communicated to your client at an appropriate point in time? It's really critical that you get these technologies thought through within your specific business in its own line. If we're moving into online orders, do your online orders come through by way of an email? And what happens to that email? Or have you now gone to the next level of digitization and found a technology that stitches the online order to a picking slip for the store individuals to do the picking, packaging, and distribution? That's what collaboration stages and principles layers look like. The second to last is coordination, and the technologies over here are there to increase integration and stitching the activities together. And I just want to talk briefly around what this means. If you think about any business, it has a front end, which is classically all the customer-facing sales, marketing, engagement activities. It then has a back end, which is operations and fulfillment. And this applies to every single business out there, whether you be selling a product or whether you be selling a service. What we are looking for here in the coordination layer of digitization is where we can get the lungs, liver, heart, kidneys, and spleen to integrate and stitch together. So if we look at it, a business is led through sales, but it's supported by fulfillment. How many of you in your business have constant conflicts between the front end sales teams and the operational delivery fulfillment teams, where they argue the sales teams are selling the wrong service or the wrong product, and the front end teams are arguing that the back end teams aren't delivering effectively? The gears that shape and make these two parts of the engine, front end and back end work, aren't meeting effectively. And what you're looking to do with coordination, digitized technologies, is make sure that as data is generated here, it informs and lines up the back end to be able to fulfill that order. I'll give you an example. When you make something, surely you would want to know if the process of making or preparing to make it, whether it be a service or a product, surely if you have foresight in what's coming down the pipe and you're in operations, and you can see there are going to be 6 orders for this, or 14 orders for this, or 138 orders for this, you can immediately, before the orders come through, as a request for you to fulfill them, begin lining up and affecting and impacting your ability to procure, produce, and deliver on those orders. That's what I mean by stitching. You're looking for signals in your marketing front end to be digitally transferred to signals in your production, fulfillment, operations back end. If we look at the examples, a sale done must trigger a purchase order that triggers the job order. It should happen all the way through without pieces of paper flying around. When you've got your communications software in place and you've digitized that aspect of your business, you've got your collaboration elements digitized. This is the second to last stage of digitization. You now want to stitch the technologies on the front end to the technologies you're using in the back end, to the technologies you're using in stores and admin. Another good example is minimum reordering quantities triggering purchase orders to finance. The last thing you want to be is out of stock at this point in time, or you want to be undercapacitated to deliver on orders for services that you're able to provide. You need to have a very good sense of what your capacity looks like. And very often, especially in services businesses, most people do not understand their capacity. Most people think that capacity looks like this. Well, you know, I'm a printing business. I have a litho printer, and my litho printer operates 4 hours of the day. Therefore, I have capacity to increase it by 50% to 8 hours a day. I beg your pardon, 100% to 8 hours a day. That's not the measure of capacity. Capacity is far more complicated than that. Because if you suddenly do increase the volume of print demand to get your litho printer working 8 hours a day, have you considered what that means for preventative maintenance or what it means for procurement in stores? Because if you don't have the inks, if you don't have the papers, if you don't have all the bits and bobs and tools that you need to maintain that machine working for 8 hours a day, well, then you haven't understood capacity. In the services sector, how many of you actually quantify your staff hours into inventory units? That's what coordinated digitization requires you to do. It's so you can understand with the number of hours available in each individual that you employ in your services business, do you have the right proportions of skills to deliver the final service? And if you increase the opportunity to market and you get a good response because you've changed the nature of your service for the COVID economy effectively, and most of your competitors have not, do you have the right capabilities on board to deliver it? Because it's now when people make an order for either product or service, through that desperation, they expect it to be delivered. Without good coordination, you break your brand and you break your reputation. The last area of digitization, the fourth layer, the most sophisticated layer, is about competition. And this is where you're looking to gain a competitive advantage. If you look at the world is becoming increasingly more and more and more commoditized. This idea that my product advantage is what makes me special is long dead. The idea that my service makes me special is long dead too. The idea that my price makes me special is long dead too. And I'll tell you why. Because all your competitors out there have the same ability to compete on product, service, and price. Competition now is becoming a customer experience format. If my experience of working with you is that you were super fast, super efficient, consistently and predictably, then that is an advantage. And here's the thing, if your service relies on you and you having a bad day, or you're unable to be at work because you're not feeling top of the morning, or whatever the case might be, or you're juggling 500 other balls, and that customer comes in expecting a certain level of service and doesn't get it, then by definition, it's harmed your brand. And it's put you in amongst all your other competitors who have not recognized that a product advantage, a service advantage, and a price advantage is only truly a single advantage when it can be delivered at scale. And what scale means is that you've got to be able to deliver it at very high, consistent volumes on a consistently predictable expectation that your clients have. So think of that as the edge of new competition. Let's see what we can do to enhance that. There are many technologies out there now. A lot of you are no doubt familiar about the Internet of Things. These are devices that identify something and transmit the data into a workflow. For example, a small business that I've invested in the bee and honey industry in Europe, created a hive with a small device in it that geolocates the hive, but also measures the vibrational quotient of the hive. And they correlate the vibrational quotient to the level of honey production. If the vibrational quotient is below a certain level, it means that the hive is unhealthy and unhappy. And classically, what that means is it needs to be relocated to a better region. If it's above a certain level, you know that the hive is happy and healthy. Those kinds of capabilities have meant that those hives have been sold to over 2,800 peasant farmers in Europe, who place these hives in and around the foothills of wherever their villages are in order to harvest honey. That's what I mean by using a competitive advantage through technology to gain the technological distinction. That's not possible if you don't have the communications layer in place, the collaboration layer in place, and the coordination layer in place. This level of competition is the final layer. It's the last layer that you typically engage in order to get it right. There are a couple of other examples there. This recording, incidentally, will be made available to everybody. I want to move on to some of the key considerations, of which there are 4 or 5. The first is control. When you digitize your business, right from the very earliest level, which is communications, all the way through to the end, which is competition, you need to think about who gets access to what. When you're looking at the technologies, make sure that you yourself understand user rights and how, as the key admin resource in your business, you're going to allocate access to the capabilities of the technology and access to the information that is stored within that technology to your teams. You need to think about safety. The moment you digitize, you do expose yourself to all sorts of cybercrime and risks. We all already are exposed to it through the mere fact that we're using Zoom, that we have emails, that we might have Facebook accounts and LinkedIn accounts. We're all exposed to it. You need to upgrade and think more profoundly around your security. That typically means virus software and firewalls. You need to think about education. You yourself need to upskill and capacitate yourself to understand this world better. Please believe me, there are thousands of free hours available on YouTube on literally any aspect of technology imaginable. At the same time, you need to get your team up to speed. And that brings me on to team. It's my view that as much as we generate and create jobs, employees need to earn their rights to work in our organizations. And by earn your rights, I mean this. If you have staff that say, oh, I'm not a tech person, oh, I can't understand tech, that is their choice. I can promise you, we as business owners cannot afford to have that mindset on board. We cannot afford to tolerate it at all. There is nothing that prevents any individual out there getting onto YouTube and getting themselves upskilled through a lifelong learning process of watching videos on how to use certain technologies. If they opt to go home and watch TV or watch Netflix instead, it is their decision. You need to send a very clear message to your staff that it's important that they themselves support their own increased capability to work with, adopt, adapt, and understand technology. Because the world we're going into, and the winners out there will be those businesses that aggressively move down the curve of digitization. It also means that when you hire new people, the way you used to recruit, the questions you used to ask, need to have a bevy of other questions to it. You want demonstrable evidence of people being comfortable with technology. For a lot of us, Zoom and screens are new. For a lot of you, you come onto a webinar like this, you look at the screen with a lot of uncertainty. But if you do it again and again and again, you go into Zoom and you look at the tutorials yourself, and you spend time on those tutorials, you yourself will master this technology in a matter of 2 hours. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect our staff and employees to do the same. Guys, I want you to really think about this in the following mindset. We need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Hope is not a strategy. It's simply hope. That's all it is. This is not an unfair environment we're in. We are all facing it, and everyone is sailing in the same choppy, stormy seas globally at the moment. Our job as business owners is to take 100% control over what we can. It is our business. We need to prepare for the worst of it. We need to adopt a view that says, well, how long will this last? Because in my view, it is a war zone. My view is that we are looking at an 18-month run over here. It's going to be determined not only by the rates of infection and whether they increase or decrease, but really by the capacity of the country we're living in to accommodate ill people. Do we have enough PPE? Do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough access to medical services and hospitalization? I don't think it would be unfair to imagine a world where we have social distancing or physical distancing, active and alive, with intermittent lockdowns taking place. And in that environment, how do you lead? Because certainly from what I've learned, when you're in a battleground and the lay of the land is constantly changing, the best place to lead from is not from behind like a general would, but from the front like a warrior would. From the front, 1 foot in front of the next, because you have to make the calls to preserve your business and lead your team. I think we're in for an 18-month run. And again, I'm working with preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. We need to survive the lockdown, and we need to grow after the lockdown, because I think we might and can possibly expect a second lockdown later on in the year. And then finally, I want to say this to you folks. Necessity is the mother of all invention. I promise you, if you adopt the right attitude to this, and if you develop a resilient mindset that says, I will do whatever I need to do to fight for my business, to keep it alive during this period, so that I can fight and grow once this period has ended. If you simply make that decision and let that decision guide every action you take, you will emerge from this far better, far stronger, with far more opportunity. Because I promise you, most of your competitors have not chosen that mindset. Most of them are sitting like deer in the headlights, looking to flee or freeze. The mere fact that you're on this webinar says you're here to fight. I want to end off with just a couple of resources we've made available. Please imagine that that's you sitting, battle hardened, with a hard hat, ready for anything that's going to fall on you. You've got these two massive Dobermans guarding you, and you're surrounded by a series of tool sets. There's a recording of this webinar that I will make available. There are many other webinars on this resource at warwick.com. We've spoken about building a business battle plan. We have spoken about how to negotiate with the landlord. We've created landlord negotiation letter templates that you must use and can use freely. We've done so with SARS as well. Letters on how to negotiate with SARS, what SARS will negotiate, what SARS won't negotiate, the preconditions for negotiation. Most importantly, there are 2 webinars on people, how you work with your team, how you work with your people, how you make your people productive during this period, how you get the best out of your team. There's a lot on leadership, around behavior, the way that you need to behave in order to demonstrate to your team that you're authentic, you're real, and that you're with them, even though you might have to let them go. There are 2 webinars on 2 books that I recommend reading. The one is Sweat, Scale, Sell. It's a playbook on how to build a business in a really tough zero growth economy. And the other one, produced by Bruce Whitfield, is The Upside of Down, where he talks about businesses that were built in the darkest of times and how those dark times created real opportunity. There's also an opportunity for you to put specific questions you want answered and further topics you want covered. And incidentally, through no fault of yours or mine, I went in the deep, dark hours of every morning leading up to the end of March and recorded Sweat Scale Cell, which is now available as, literally, it's worked out as a Corona service. It's available on Audible. If you are on Audible, I would encourage you to take a listen. I can promise you that it's an entirely practical book. It's not a dry business book. It's a book of 11 stories of people who started their businesses against all odds. Some succeeded, some failed. It's the lessons learned, and those lessons are all fundamentally activity, action-orientated, and practical. The last thing is I'd like to end by saying, if you have found value in this, and you believe it could be of value to either your suppliers or customers, because we don't exist on our own. And as SMEs, we're most likely working with a lot of SME suppliers, and we have SMEs in our customer chains too. Please encourage them to draw access on these resources and encourage them to get different perspectives, because their survival is as critical to our survival as one would imagine. As SMEs, we think in a certain way as founders of businesses, buyers of businesses, and builders of businesses. I promise you, we think differently to the way that government thinks and very differently to the way that corporates think. We need to draw on ourselves, and we need to back ourselves in an environment where we need ourselves to survive. And with that, I thank you very much for joining me. I went slightly over time. There was a lot of content there. I never managed to get through all of it, but as I said, the webinar and the content will be available on that resource site. With that, I thank you very much. Have a good day further.